Hi, thanks for joining us. We are live in Las Vegas at Adobe Summit 2017. I'm Wendy Steinle, Director of Marketing Strategy and Operations for Adobe's Digital Marketing Business Unit. And I am joined today by Brian Fanzo, CEO of iSocialFanz and a keynote speaker. And we are talking today all about experience and the role of social. So Brian, thanks so much for joining me.
I'm excited to be here. It was a lot of fun.
Well, let's just get started. How about tell us a little bit about iSocialFanz?
So I have a kind of a unique background. I call myself a change evangelist. I worked in cybersecurity at the data center, and now I help brands kind of tell their digital story. So it's leveraging new media to reach a new audience, and ideally we use all different types of technology as well as social networks to kind of reach an audience that I would say traditional brands don't really reach. So I speak at a lot of events on change and really where the digital future is going, and then I work with brands to kind of amplify what they're doing, which is really nice. So I like to say I translate the geek speak for brands to kind of connect with a new audience.
Very cool. Well, you know, maybe you can help explain to everybody. So Snapchat finally did an IPO, and for you, you know, as a first mover and influencer on or as Snapchat being a first mover and influencer, what are the different experience it provides over other social networks? Why is it so hot?
So I think the issue has been like the last 9 or 10 years, digital has actually taken us further away from the human condition and really human interaction. We've been putting websites up, putting barriers, and really distancing ourselves from the customer, from these conversations, and I think it also distanced the authenticity of our content. And I think, especially for the younger generation, and as what Snapchat was really kind of delivering was this idea of conversations that are right to the point, that have kind of their own validity where it's structured, but this also this element of how do you tell a story from the perspective of someone that isn't perfect, that has vulnerabilities and imperfections. And so I think Snapchat really embraced this concept that we know that this community wants to leverage social, but they don't want to use social, they want to communicate with their friends, and they want to do it in a way that they feel is kind of natural for them. And this idea of documenting your life kind of has emerged from from the idea of Snapchat. And so I have the Snapchat spectacles. I've been a user since early on, and I think it kind of just leads into this future a lot into what I do with brands, because how do you shrink the distance? You have to have that authentic avenue to have conversations.
Yeah.
And I think Snapchat allows you to direct replies back and forth. And for me, for a lot of the brands and leaders that are on there, it's video conversation and it's a video reply back. And what other platforms can you truly engage with the exact same type of content, both from the person that's sending the message as well as the receiver? And I think Snapchat jumped on that, and I also think they understand their user base. I think Evan and the team, they are really dialed in to what their users want, and some of the things are frustrating, especially for marketers. The data and growing your following and all of these limitations, and they have some pressure with Instagram stories and some things that are going on, but I think they really have a handle on their community, and I'm confident that they're going to move to a couple interesting directions in the near future that'll be exactly what their customers want.
Yeah, and it's curious to me whether they'll be able to take that drive and desire, human desire for authenticity, and how do you engage an older audience? Because once you go public, there's this pressure to tap into the wallet.
And I think with the growing, with millennials being 50% of the workforce, and this idea, I always say you have to connect with both the digital native as well as the digital dinosaur. And how do you kind of merge those worlds? And I think part of it comes down to an education perspective, as well as kind of explaining, hey, this is a way that is a different way of communicating. And by extending yourself and kind of opening yourself up to sharing stuff that maybe you didn't before, it opens up doors. I always ask people, are you not sharing that because it's something that it's risk versus reward, it's too risky or you're uncomfortable? Or are you not sharing it because it's not a natural habit that you haven't shared it before? Because just because it wasn't natural to do that on Twitter or on Instagram doesn't mean it doesn't fit on Snapchat and some of the new media that's coming out.
Well, I have to agree. I think human behavioral change is one of the biggest challenges to really adopting any kind of technological advancement. So, well, Periscope, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as a millennial voice, what are the younger generations using, and what content can create a meaningful brand experience for them?
So I think there's the generation today has had I like to think that it's not many people are louder than any other generation. Millennials and Gen Z aren't doing anything that's that drastically different than the previous generations. But I believe we have the largest megaphone that's ever existed, which is the digital and social media space. So it's not that they're technically yelling louder or wanting to connect and do crazier things. It's just they have the opportunity to do so. I have young daughters and they're able to Skype and FaceTime when I'm overseas, and the idea of this, not being limited by your location, not being limited by your background, your resume. You have the ability to leverage these tools to tell your story, to learn from other people's stories, and ultimately experience other cultures. I mean, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I remember not leaving the state for one vacation, and my exposure to the world at the time was really through the people I knew and the connections I had in that community. My daughters were born in Arizona and probably knew as much about Virginia as anyone else because we had family there and they connected. And so I think the next generation is really looking and saying, how do I connect with an unfiltered, open book? How can I connect with the world and have this opportunity? But then also, how can I do it in the most authentic way? And I think Zuckerberg, I'm all in on trusting what Mark Zuckerberg is doing. And I think he's really trying to break down that barrier between, it's not online and offline life, it's just living. Especially younger generation, they don't even think about, how your friends being different online as offline. It's the exact same, kind of conversation and relationship. So I think the key for brands, especially extending this into that experience, is how do you talk with them? How do you let them have their voice heard and you let them know they're part of it? And I call it participatory content. I think we're looking now where it's saying, hey, we scream engagement, but is engagement a conversation? Do we allow them to shape the way our content goes? And so I do live video streams. I've done almost 1,800 in 2 years of live video streams. And for me, I go on there, I share my message, my content, and then I let them decide what questions I ask, what type of things I cover. And it's amazing because last time I checked, we create content to serve an audience, to teach them, to inspire them, to motivate them. Well, now they're able to help shape that content. It's a powerful conversation because now it's real-time shaping and real-time conversation. I think that's exciting as we move forward.
Well, it's really cool to see technology opening avenues for people to be more human again.
Yes.
Right? It's like anything new, the pendulum's way over here, and we need to get it back here so it really does create something better.
Which is exciting because I think this is ultimately the great equalizer. I think we're going to be able to highlight and amplify the good in the world and start to drown out the bad. And I think for the longest time, right now it's kind of even, and I think the bad, and we had elections and all these things that were going on. I think the more we add authentic elements with video, the most popular phrase on video is saying I don't know. Because if you're able to say, I don't know, it adds validity to what you do know. And that's what people want to know. They want to know that you're not perfect. And I think
not scripted.
That idea is, it allows the great people to be highlighted, their stories to be discovered, and it allows those that have been faking it till they make it, or I'd say mailing it in online and having two different personas, they're going to get exposed. And they're either going to have to be authentic and leverage this power of this video and this truly conversation, or they're going to get left in the dust. And I'm excited because I think that's great people that are going to be the highlight of the future.
Okay, so talking about conversation, let's talk about chatbots for a second.
Sure.
So there's been a lot of excitement about the experience chatbots can provide. Are they living up to the hype? No.
Right now, I think they're broken and disconnected. I think it's an education issue. I think trust is something that we've overlooked for far too long. I think, I call it the 3 T's: trust, training, and tools, or trust, training, and technology. And I think for a lot of times we start with the technology, the chatbot, and we don't understand that right now consumers are struggling trusting a brand or a person, and now we want them to trust an automated program. And I think for a lot of people, that trust has not been established to begin with, and with data breaches and this idea of not really knowing how people are going to use the data, and then ultimately kind of throwing them in there. There's no real workflow for a chatbot today. So I think unfortunately at the moment they're not I'd say very operable, and I think they've actually probably taken us a step back a couple years because I think initially with all of this technology, if you don't make a good impression, you start out the gate being very transparent with how the data is going to be used. They should have the training on it a little bit more in depth. I mean, Facebook, I think, missed the mark a little bit on training their users on some of their chatbot components. But I think as we move forward, we have to stop starting with that technology and starting with the trust and the training side. I think that's kind of what chatbots missed currently. Right.
So what would the future for chatbots look like? It sounds like you've laid out a few things that they would need to do in order to get there, but what would that ultimate experience be that you think is possible?
So I like to say simplifying the predictability is really where innovation is going to happen in a place like a chatbot. So the idea of predictable behaviors, predictable conversations, dynamically learning things where the fact that if you have to ask us the same thing over and over again, or if you do something the same every single day, that's where technology is going to be able to come in and truly innovate. And imagine giving us back 3 to 4 minutes in the morning, leveraging a chatbot to do something that we have to do every single day. That's 3 to 4 more minutes with my kids at the breakfast table. And I look at this idea of, okay, if we can simplify the predictive conversations and the things that seem very repetitive, that's where it's going to be innovation, where it actually creates an experience. Because no one wants new technology for technology. We want to say, how is that going to make our lives better, and what experience is it going to enable?
Well, great. Well, in just a few words of wrap up, what advice can you give to our viewers about ways to create a holistic experience using next-gen social technologies?
So I think, I call it think like a fan, and it helps my last name's Fanzo. And I say put yourself in your fan's shoes and give them access and make them know that their voice is heard, and give them access to people, places, and products and experiences. And if you allow them to feel special, and you allow them to let them know that, hey, I'm listening and I care, that's where that trust and authenticity start. But if we don't start there, it's hard to come back afterwards when we need them to feel sorry for us, or we need them to start doing things for us. They won't do it. So I really look at this as, how do I start out of the gate of changing the conversation and think like a fan?
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you, it was a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us.
Awesome, good stuff.
Thank you.